The night I saw you kiss him. Something inside me cracked so quietly I almost didn't notice, but the silence that followed was unbearable. I remember thinking, so this is what it feels like to lose someone who was never really mine. It had been raining that evening, soft, persistent, the kind of rain that carries memories rather than washes them away. We were supposed to meet at the old record store on 5th, the one that still smelled of vinyl and dust and stories from decades ago. But you never showed up. Instead, I found you 2 blocks away, laughing with someone else, his hand brushing yours like it belonged there. For a moment, I wanted to believe it was innocent, that you hadn't forgotten me, that you still meant what you said that night under the flickering neon sign, that I made you feel like home. But when you leaned in, when I saw the way your lips touched his like you'd been waiting your whole life for that moment, I understood. You'd found your home in someone else. It's been a year since that night. A year since I walked away without saying goodbye. The city has changed, or maybe I have. The old record store closed down, replaced by a minimalist cafe that sells overpriced lattes and quiet heartbreaks. I work at an art gallery now, where everything is curated and framed, even emotions. It's easier that way to look at pain as something beautiful from a distance. And then, one evening, while closing up the gallery, I saw you again. You were standing by the door, rain clinging to your hair, your breath visible in the cold air. You looked older, not in years, but in the way people do when they've been through something they can't quite name. Ian, you said, my name trembling like it was made of glass. Jude. The sound of it was both a wound and a memory. You smiled, but it didn't reach your eyes. I didn't know where else to go. I could have said 1,000 things. You shouldn't have come. You broke me. I moved on. I hate you. But all that came out was, you're wet. Come in. You sat by the window while I made tea, the same way we used to when nights felt endless and the world felt ours. The rain painted the city in streaks of silver outside, and for a moment, I wanted to believe nothing had changed. But everything had. Do you still listen to the Smiths? You asked softly. I looked at you, at the faint scar near your jawline, the way your fingers traced the rim of the cup like they were afraid to stay still. Sometimes, when I feel like torturing myself, you gave a small laugh, the kind that sounded like it had forgotten how to be happy. I broke up with him, you said suddenly. The words hung there, heavy, unnecessary. I didn't ask, I replied. I know, but I wanted you to know anyway. I turned away, pretending to adjust the blinds, pretending I didn't care. But inside, everything I'd buried for a year began clawing its way back to the surface. The way your eyes lit up when you talked about dreams, the smell of your hoodie on cold nights, the sound of your laugh echoing off city walls. Why are you here, Jude? You hesitated. Because I couldn't stop thinking about you. Because every time I looked at him, I wished it was you. Because I realized, too late, that I was scared. Of what people would say, of what I felt, of how much I loved you. The honesty in your voice was almost cruel. I don't know if I can do this again, I whispered. You leaned forward, your voice breaking. Then let me try alone. Let me prove it this time. There was a long silence, the kind that feels like a lifetime compressed into a heartbeat. I looked at you and saw everything I tried to forget. The boy who once laughed at my terrible jokes. The boy who made me believe love could be simple. The boy who chose someone else when things got hard. I watched you love him, I said quietly, and it almost killed me. I know, you said, tears forming at the edges of your eyes. I watched me love him too, and it didn't make me happy. We stayed like that for a while, 2 people suspended between what was and what could be. You reached across the table, fingers trembling, unsure. I didn't pull away. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. It was something else. The space between anger and hope, between the ache of what's been lost and the faint pulse of what might still be found. The city outside hummed with its usual chaos. Car horns, footsteps, laughter. But inside, the world had shrunk down to this small moment, fragile and infinite. I don't need you to forgive me right now, you said softly. I just need you to let me stay. I should have said no. I should have sent you away like you sent me away that night. But when I looked at you, at the boy I once loved and the man you'd become, I knew I couldn't. Stay, I said. Just that one word. But it carried the weight of a year's worth of silence, and something inside both of us shifted. That night, we didn't talk much. You fell asleep on the couch, your hand half hanging off the edge, like you were afraid of reaching too far. I watched you for a long time, the rise and fall of your chest, the way your hair fell over your forehead. I wanted to hate you for how easily you still looked like home. When morning came, sunlight spilled across the room, golden and soft. You woke up, blinking sleep from your eyes, and smiled at me. A small, uncertain smile that felt like the first real one in forever. Morning, you said. Morning felt ordinary, and maybe that was what made it so terrifying. Over the next few weeks, you kept showing up. To the gallery, to my apartment, to the quiet corners of my life I'd built without you. You didn't push. You didn't ask for more than I could give. You just stayed. Fixing broken light bulbs, cooking breakfast, sitting beside me in silence when words were too heavy. And slowly, against my better judgment, I began to let you in again. It wasn't like before. It was slower, quieter. There were no declarations, no promises. Just small, steady moments, like learning to breathe again after almost drowning. One night, as we walked home through the rain, you stopped suddenly and looked at me. Ian, you said, your voice trembling but sure. I choose you. The words hit me like lightning. A year ago, they would have been everything I ever wanted. Now they felt like both a gift and a wound. I didn't answer right away. I needed to feel the truth of them to see if they would hold. And when I finally spoke, it was barely a whisper. Then don't make me regret it. The rain kept falling, and somewhere between the city lights and the sound of our footsteps, I realized something. Love isn't about never leaving. It's about coming back when it would have been easier not to. That night, after you said I choose you, we didn't go home right away. The rain had softened into a mist that clung to our clothes, turning the world into a blur of light and shadow. You walked beside me, our shoulders brushing, your silence steady. Not heavy, not awkward, just full. When we reached my building, I hesitated at the door. Part of me wanted to invite you in, to let the warmth finish what the rain had started. But another part of me, the one still carrying the ghost of every unanswered message and every night I stared at your name on my phone, whispered, not yet. You must have seen the hesitation in my eyes because you nodded and said quietly, "Good night, Ian," and you smiled that small, careful smile again, the kind that feels like an apology wrapped in hope. "Good night, Jude." You turned and walked away, your hands in your pockets, your head bowed slightly against the drizzle. I stood there until you disappeared around the corner, the words "I choose you" echoing in the back of my mind like a song I couldn't stop replaying. Days passed, weeks maybe. Time had a strange way of bending around you. Everything before you felt distant, everything after you felt uncertain. You became a constant presence again, but softer this time. You didn't call every night. You didn't push for answers. You simply showed up. At the gallery, you dropped by during lunch breaks, helping me set up installations or pretending to understand abstract art. Sometimes we'd sit in the back room, eating sandwiches and listening to the hum of the city outside. "I think people overcomplicate love," you said once, your gaze following the streaks of sunlight on the wall. "Do they?" I asked. "Yeah, maybe it's just about showing up, again and again, even when you're scared." I didn't answer, but in that moment, I realized that was exactly what you'd been doing, showing up, quietly, consistently, patiently. One evening, the gallery hosted an exhibition themed around second chances. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. The place was packed, warm light spilling across framed paintings, murmurs blending with soft jazz. You stood by one of the larger canvases, hands tucked in your pockets, your profile outlined by the golden glow. It was a painting of two figures facing opposite directions, their hands almost touching but not quite. You turned to me and smiled. Looks familiar. It's about hesitation, I said. About wanting to reach out but not knowing if you'll be caught. Or maybe it's about hope, you replied. That even if you're not caught, it still means something that you tried. For the first time in a long while, I didn't feel the sharp edge of pain when I looked at you. I felt something gentler, something closer to peace. Later that night, when the last guest had left, we stood by that same painting in silence. The city outside pulsed with life, but the gallery felt like another world. You looked at me and said quietly, I never told you why I left. I tensed but didn't stop you. I was terrified, you continued. I grew up in a place where people like us didn't exist, or if they did, they didn't last long being honest about it. And then you came along, and suddenly I was feeling things that didn't fit into the life I'd been told to live. So I ran. I thought maybe if I tried hard enough, I could make it go away. You swallowed, your voice breaking. But it didn't. Not for a day. Not for a second. I wanted to look away, to protect the part of me that still flinched when I heard your name, but I couldn't. You were standing there, raw, unguarded, real, and something in me softened despite everything. I get it, I said finally, but you have to understand, when you left, it wasn't just that you were scared. You made me believe I wasn't enough. You stepped closer, your voice trembling. You were always enough, Ian. I just wasn't brave enough. That night, after closing up, we walked home in silence. The streets glowed with rainlight, reflections stretching like fragile veins across the asphalt. When we reached my building again, I didn't hesitate this time. Come up, I said. You blinked, surprised, then nodded. Inside, everything felt familiar. The quiet hum of the fridge, the faint scent of paint from my last project, the small crack near the window I'd never fixed. You looked around, smiling softly. It's the same, you said. Mostly. You turned to me then, your expression unreadable. Are you still angry? Yes, I said honestly. But I'm also tired of pretending I'm not still in love with you. You froze, and for a moment, everything hung between us, fragile and dangerous. Then you took a step forward, then another. When your lips touched mine, it wasn't like before. Not desperate, not stolen. It was careful, trembling, almost reverent, like we were both afraid to break whatever this was becoming. And when we finally pulled away, I saw something in your eyes I hadn't seen a year ago, certainty. You cupped my face gently. I'm not running anymore, and for the first time I believed you. The next morning you were still there, curled on the couch, hair messy, breathing steady. I made coffee and watched the light move across your face. Felt ordinary, beautifully, painfully ordinary. That's when I realized that maybe that's what love was supposed to be. Not fireworks, not grand gestures, just presence. You stirred, blinking sleepily. You're staring, just checking you're real. You smiled, stretching lazily. Still am, for now. I threw a pillow at you. You laughed. That laugh I hadn't heard in so long. The one that used to fill entire rooms. And I laughed too, surprised at how good it felt. But healing isn't linear. There were days when it was easy, when laughter came freely and trust felt natural. And there were days when I'd catch myself flinching at your touch, memories rushing back like shadows. You never pushed, you just stayed. Sometimes late at night we'd talk, about everything and nothing, about the people we used to be and the people we were still trying to become. One night you said, I used to think love was about never making mistakes. Now I think it's about learning how to be forgiven. I looked at you, my chest tightening. And what if forgiveness doesn't come? You smiled sadly. Then at least I'll know I tried. Spring turned to summer. The city warmed, and with it, something inside me did too. One evening, as we sat on the rooftop, watching the sun sink behind the skyline, you reached for my hand. Your fingers intertwined with mine. Steady, familiar. I used to dream about this, you said quietly. About us. About getting it right this time. I looked at you, really looked, and realized that somewhere along the way, the boy I'd loved had grown into a man who finally understood what love required. Not perfection, not promises, just presence again and again. And for the first time, I let myself exhale. Because maybe you were right. Maybe love was about showing up. And this time you had. The summer slipped away slowly, like it didn't want to end. The nights grew shorter, the air thicker, and the space between us, the invisible line that once carried hesitation, began to dissolve. You started leaving some of your things at my place. A book here, a jacket there. Then your toothbrush appeared one morning beside mine, and you didn't mention it. Neither did I, but we both knew what it meant. It meant you were staying. Some days it felt too easy, like the universe was making up for lost time. You'd hum while making breakfast, wearing one of my old t-shirts, sunlight spilling over your shoulders. I'd watch from the couch, pretending to read the paper, and think about how fragile this piece was, how quickly it could all disappear again. But then you'd turn, flash that crooked grin, and for a moment all the noise inside me would go quiet. That's how healing happens, I realized, not all at once, but in small, ordinary ways. One evening in late August, the sky bruised into deep shades of orange and violet. The air smelled of rain even though it hadn't fallen yet. We were on the rooftop again, the same place where a year ago, I'd promised myself I'd never look back. You were sketching something in your notebook, your brow furrowed, tongue between your teeth, a habit I'd always teased you for. "What are you drawing?" I asked. You turned the notebook toward me. It was a rough sketch of two hands, fingers almost touching, the space between them alive with tension. "It's us," you said quietly. "From before." I looked at it, feeling the ache of recognition. "Looks unfinished." You smiled faintly. "That's the point. We're still writing it." The simplicity of that hit me harder than I expected. You didn't see us as broken or perfect, just unfinished. And maybe that was what love really was. A work in progress that never truly ends. Later that night, a storm rolled in, fast and uninvited. The rain hammered against the windows, and thunder shook the walls. We lost power around midnight, the apartment falling into darkness. You laughed softly, just like old times. I found a candle in the kitchen drawer, lit it and set it between us. The flickering light painted your face in gold and shadow. You looked at me for a long time, too long. "What?" I asked, smiling nervously. "I keep thinking about that night," you said. "The one when I left." My chest tightened. "Why?" "Because I keep replaying it in my head, trying to find the moment I could have chosen differently." You paused, eyes flickering to the candle flame. "I think it was when you looked at me like you were seeing me for the first time, and I looked away." The storm raged outside, wind howling against the glass. "Ian," you whispered, "if I could go back." I cut you off gently. "Don't. You can't." You nodded slowly. "Then let me make it matter now." You leaned forward, the candlelight dancing between us, and kissed me. Slow, deliberate, like every second of the past year had been leading to this moment. And this time there was no fear, no hesitation, only truth. The next morning the storm was gone. The world looked washed clean, like it had been rewritten overnight. You were standing by the window, a mug in your hands, watching the city wake up. "You ever think about what comes next?" I asked. You turned, eyes soft. "Every day. And I think it's about building something small, something real, not perfect, not dramatic, just ours." You crossed the room, set your mug down, and took my hand. "I spent a long time loving the idea of love. Now I just want to live it." For a moment, the simplicity of that was enough. A few weeks later, you got a job offer in another city, 3 hours away. You told me about it over dinner, your voice calm but uncertain. "It's a big opportunity," you said, "but I don't want to leave again." My fork froze midair. The words "leave again" echoed louder than I wanted them to. "What do you want me to say, Jude?" "I want you to tell me what you feel," you said, your tone soft but firm. "I don't know," I admitted. "Part of me wants to ask you to stay. But the other part, the part that learned to survive without you, it knows I can't ask that." You reached across the table, your fingers brushing mine. "Then maybe this time I won't be leaving. Maybe you'll just be trusting me to come back." I stared at you. The same boy who once ran from love, now speaking about it like a vow. And maybe that was the answer. Not to hold tighter, but to believe. The night before you left, we went back to the old record store, or what was left of it. The place had been boarded up, graffiti covering the walls. But standing there, in front of that ghost of a building, felt strangely right. You took my hand, your thumb tracing slow circles against my skin. "This is where I first realized I loved you," you said. "Really?" You nodded. "You were arguing with the cashier about whether Bowie or Springsteen had the better live album. You were so alive. I remember thinking, God, I want to be the reason he smiles like that." I laughed softly, shaking my head. "You never told me that." "I was too scared then." "Not anymore." You stepped closer. "I'm still choosing you, Ian. Every day. Even when we're not in the same place." I swallowed hard. "Then I'll choose you too. Every time." And that was how it ended, or maybe how it began again. You left the next morning. There were no promises of forever, no grand gestures. Just a long hug at the train station, your forehead pressed against mine, our breaths tangled in the cool morning air. "I'll be back before you know it," you whispered. "I'll be here," I said. And for once, I wasn't scared. Months passed. We found a rhythm. Calls late at night, letters tucked into packages, photos of small things that reminded us of each other. There were days when distance felt unbearable. But there were also days when I'd wake up, see the sun spilling through my window, and feel peace. Because this time, love didn't feel like waiting, felt like growing. 1 year later, on a quiet autumn afternoon, I was hanging a new piece at the gallery when I heard someone behind me say, "You still hang them crooked." I froze. When I turned, you were standing there, smiling, older, lighter somehow. "I told you I'd come back," you said. I didn't move. I didn't speak. I just looked at you, letting the truth of it sink in. You walked closer, your eyes soft, your voice trembling with something between laughter and tears. "I'm still choosing you," and this time I didn't hesitate. I stepped forward, closed the distance, and whispered back, "I know." Later that night, as we stood outside the gallery, city lights reflecting in your eyes, I thought about everything that had brought us here. The heartbreak, the distance, the years of almosts and maybes. Love, I realized, isn't about who stays. It's about who comes back, and keeps coming back until the story feels right. And you did. You came back. And this time you stayed.